Hi, folks. I'm Sean Crabtree.
And I'm Cameron Bailey.
We don't want to change the way you do business.
We want to change the way you're thinking about your business.
We want you to have better results, happier clients, and make more money.
Let's get it started.
And welcome into Dental Profits. I am your host, Sean Crabtree, where we come to you live each week with great tips on how to have happier clients, better results, and make more money. I'm so happy to have a guest today. I wish you were in studio, John. I have Mr. John Nadeau, who is the Vice President of Sleep Group Solutions. I'm so pumped about this conversation. Sleep Group Solutions is a dental, continuing education, and airway diagnostic technology company serving the needs of physicians and dentists interested in screening, diagnosing, and treating sleep apnea and other upper airway disorders. Their mission is to educate the dental community on their role in snoring and sleep apnea. John, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
Listen, I am really happy to have you. You and I have talked before about some of the challenges. Can you hear me okay? All right.
Yeah.
You and I have talked before about some of the challenges that we see in the industry among all sorts of things. And I just want to let you roll here, basically. As you know, I am a huge sleep proponent. We have many of our clients who not only see value in implementing sleep, they put a focus on sleep. The diagnostic aspects of sleep, because they put a focus on it, are through the roof, of course. I think the last stat that I saw recently said that something like 30% of the population has some sort of sleep-related breathing problem. And my personal opinion, and you may tell me I'm out to lunch, but my personal opinion is that number is probably somewhere closer to 50 or even 60%, because in my view, those types of statistics follow the diagnostics, and without the proper focal point, then the diagnostic stats aren't there. So I'm going to shut up. What say you?
I agree with you, first of all, that the number it's better than it has been in years past. When I started doing this, I got involved in this in 2002. I worked with one of the first dentists in the country to ever really make this a meaningful, not even meaningful, a sole part of his dental practice. He kind of transitioned away from TMD and craniofacial pain and moved into sleep and breathing and airway and really became a huge advocate and was one of the grandfathers of this entire field. And
that's why everybody says you are the man in the know.
Starting this, 15 or 20 years ago, I've seen a lot of things that have changed. And the numbers used to be, Shawnee, it used to be 2% of men and 0.5% of women. That was the number that we used to lecture on. We used to teach them, look at all these people that have it. And then slowly over the years, it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now, like you're saying, there's studies that say 30%, 33%, 37% of adults over 40. And it's largely due to diagnostics and the change in landscape there. One of the things I teach about, and really what I spend most of my time doing is teaching these 2-day dental sleep medicine programs, going around the country either at big dental meetings or small, more boutique special courses where it's just a dozen or two practices. Everybody gets together and we're learning about how to implement sleep. One of the things we focus on is changes that have happened over the last 15, 20 years. And one of them is in diagnostics and awareness. So awareness has increased, meaning we're screening more people. We're aware of comorbidities. The physicians are aware of comorbidities. There's more information out there, especially in the cardiac side, looking at cardiovascular comorbidities and risk of heart attack and stroke and hypertension and all the stuff that comes with sleep apnea. So that's more well known. That's helped increase awareness. I think one of the biggest things that have happened in dental sleep medicine actually occurred in 2008. And it was the kind of the embracing of home sleep testing technology, as opposed to the traditional model. Because a lot of people aren't even aware that that's really a tool available still. from the dental side, but home sleep testing, what happened in '08 is Medicare came out and said, hey, we're gonna pay for home sleep tests. We're going to embrace this. These are okay. These are accurate enough. They've been proven enough. Obviously, there's some criteria there, but home sleep monitors. So what it did is it took the monopoly of the sleep lab away, and the cumbersome process that had to happen to get somebody from screening high risk to diagnosed was a real pain in the butt. And patients were avoiding it, physicians were avoiding it, and just it was so difficult to get somebody from A to Z that it just never happened, or it didn't happen on the scale that it needed to. In '08, things changed where now you've got home sleep tests where primary care docs, ENTs, cardiologists, dentists have these devices. And so it kind of took the lid off, and it opened up testing to way more people, which subsequently means more are getting diagnosed. And so we kind of opened the floodgates with that. Now we got to deal with the consequences and the result of that, which is a lot of diagnosed patients, and a very fast path. As it sits today, a dental practice can have a hygienist screen a patient just, as they come in through their regular hygiene recall,
right.
Asking a couple questions that's not going to mess up the schedule or go over the top with, inundating them with sleep and breathing and snoring questions, feeling real pushy, but just ask a couple key questions that hopefully leads to a conversation that ultimately will lead to a sleep consult appointment and a sleep study, all within the confines of the dental office. So that real barrier to entry is gone. When, back in the old days, I say old days, but back when the dentists first started doing this, you had to be very lucky. And I say that it's kind of like, what do you mean lucky? You had to be lucky because you had to strike gold with a sleep physician in your community. Right. You had to find a sleep physician that was pro-dental. He actually had to believe that these appliances work, be willing to refer patients to you, or see your patients and refer you new patients, and work very cooperatively. And that didn't always happen. In fact, for most people, it didn't happen. And so there's, I had these dentists come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I screened 200 patients. I told them all to go for sleep studies. And after 6 months, 30 have gone. And then the 30 that went, 29 got put on CPAP. And what the hell do I have? I screened everybody and I got nothing out of it. Excuse me. With home testing, it kind of took that away. And now, a dental patient can be screened, diagnosed within the confines of the dental office. I've got a network of hundreds of sleep physicians in every state that we pair dentists up with. So part of this process where a dentist uses a home monitor, a DDS DMD cannot diagnose sleep apnea, but you can dispense the technology. And then the data gets interpreted sort of like a radiologist would,
Sure.
Where you do a CT scan and the data's read by a physician somewhere else. You get a diagnosed patient, and it's a much faster path to getting them diagnosed with a therapy order for an appliance, and that works really well. That's probably the single biggest thing that's changed in my lifetime in dental sleep medicine that's really kind of blown this field up.
And we've got, we see the same things. We pair our guys with the medical guys. And that can be, if it's handled properly, that can be a beautiful arrangement. I mean, that is a win.
Absolutely.
For the patient, for the doctor, for the dentist, everybody wins in that scenario. But you mentioned something important. Before we get too far into, because I really want to talk about some of the challenges that we see. I want to know if you see the same things. But before we get too far into that, you talked about a hygienist doing a screening. Let's back up a minute.
Yep.
My personal belief is that, and I'm sure that this may be different in different pockets of the country, but I've noticed over the last 5 years that sleep it has a groundswell. There's a momentum here. You see it. What's the old saying? Rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, I can see it's on television, it's on radio, it's on the internet, it's just everywhere. There are stories all over the place about transportation companies, making this requirement, DOTs, all sorts of things going on. And I can see that moving forward. I mean, I can see that happening across the U.S. But but back to sort of, if I'm a dentist, and a lot of the guys who are watching this, listening to this, are dentists, and they're thinking to themselves, okay, A, I've been through some training and I'm not implementing it. Okay. Or B, I've never really thought about it. How is that a benefit? If I see it all over the place, I see it advertised, I see sleep group solutions, I see John talking about it. Okay, but give me the down and dirty. If I'm a general practitioner in dentistry, what are the benefits to me? Now, of course, I know what those are.
Sure.
You tell us what those are.
There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
Depending on where we want to go with this, but we can make a whole list of them. But I think the biggest benefit, aside from, let's get away from the financial, the practice growth, although we're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. I think just helping your patients. This is something that, we're not talking about. I don't want to word this. I don't want to downplay dentistry, but we're not talking about veneers. We're not talking about some elective cosmetic procedure. We're talking about something that we're
talking about a life changer here. We're talking about an absolute
actually killing people. And every single practicing dentist out there has had a patient ultimately pass away from complications of obstructive sleep apnea, probably multiple patients. You just don't know because the rate of diagnosis is so poor. Less than 10%, way less than 10% of those suffering from this are diagnosed. And so now, the overwhelming majority are kind of in this group where they're undiagnosed, but they're suffering from and dealing with serious life-threatening consequences that came from it. And ultimately, there's a dental solution for it that's arguably the most preferred option out there. So, there's kind of this obligation that if you're not doing anything about it, then you're really doing a disservice to your patients. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't get to choose if your patients have this or not. They do. That's the reality. The reality is if you are a practicing dentist, you're going to see a dozen sleep apnea patients this week, whether you choose to or not. You don't get to make that decision. The question is, are you going to engage them? Are you going to find them? Are you going to do something to help them? Because their primary care doctors are largely not. And they usually don't get to see the highly qualified, educated, kind of in the know specialists until it's too late, until something bad happens. Right. Until Bob, who's 45, has a heart attack in his sleep. And if he survives, then all of a sudden we start looking at, oh my gosh, what happened and why? And that's something that could have been prevented. There's measurable benefit that comes from fixing this problem early. You can reverse a lot of these things too. So at the end of the day, I think why we need to do it is because there's an overriding obligation to be healthcare providers, to be, to do our duty and help those people. Now, can we build good business and increase our reputation in the community and our standing and our physician and dental relationships and certainly, make some money at this and make it, if you choose to, a significant part of your practice? And absolutely. Sean, I know you've seen it with lots of offices, so have I. There's different levels that people can take it like anything else, but there's certainly a huge opportunity here. There's not a lot of things that dentists can do that get reimbursed by medical insurance. You talk about some TMD stuff where there's trauma or accidents, and yes, some of that and some of the scans and that type stuff. But that's all very conditional. It's kind of each case is unique and requires special everything. Sleep medicine is very cut and dry. The coverage for this is incredibly widespread. It's very, very rare these days that I see a medical insurance plan that doesn't have a provision for payment for oral appliances to a dentist to manage sleep disorder breathing, sleep apnea. Medicare pays for it across the country, and all the private payers do as well. So it's, there's an opportunity here. It's something that is relatively new. The coverage is nice and widespread, and there's certainly an opportunity here to do well.
I can tell you for my guys that get into sleep, the biggest thing, and you've hit on some really good points. The biggest thing, honestly, is, some of these guys, maybe they've been heavy into cosmetics, TMJ, whatever. I mean, this is one of those things where, if you've been practicing for a number of years and your hands are tired, your back is sore, and all of that. I mean, this is a beautiful game changer because we're talking about a scenario where there is very little strenuous physical activity that happens from the doctor. Most all of it happens with the auxiliary players on the team. And you still have the ability of the fulfillment of changing patients' lives. One of the things that, and I want to ask you about this, I've got some cosmetic guys who have gone into sleep. I've got some just what I would call bread and butter dentists who have gotten into sleep. If you're listening to this and you're a general dentist, it is a perfect marriage. And I'd love for you to speak to this from your side of the coin. But from my side of the coin, what I see is this is an absolute easy integration because if you do what you said, if you're just asking a few simple questions on the front end, if you incorporate it as who you are and sort of your identity as part of the process, then I can't tell you how many cases my guys have had who have come in maybe for a cosmetic consult. Maybe they came in for some other kind of consult, but because all of it is incorporated together, now we're talking about a sleep appliance. We're talking about perhaps some cosmetic dentistry. I mean, the bite is important because we're talking about an appliance that goes into the mouth. So, I mean, it really is, it's a natural integration. The biggest thing that we see, though, is if a doctor who's listening to this truly enjoys the fulfillment of changing somebody's life and you don't have the back left to do it, man, this is where it lives. And this is why I love it. I mean, this is why I love it. It's about happier clients, better results, and making more money. And so I'd love for you to speak to a couple things, if you don't mind. The doctor who's listening to this, John, who is saying, you know what, I've been through the training, and it's just like the CEREC that I had that's back there gathering dust, or it's just like these other things that I've got on the shelf. I'm not doing anything with it. I mean, first of all, I would say, what do you say to that dentist? Secondly, what do you see if you had to guess, or the top three things that would have somebody in this place? They went through Lumineers training back in the day, and they didn't do anything with that. They, they took an implant course. They didn't do anything with that. What are the top three challenges that you see, and how would you speak to that?
Top challenges. I think gosh, you just said so much stuff.
I know. I threw a whole bunch.
I completely agree. First of all, that it's an absolute perfect thing especially for the doctors out there that are watching this, that are, that are tired. That really, in terms of the physical labor involved in a dental sleep medicine case, doctor time, chair time with doctor time. Right. Most of it is in a consultation kind of, you're having a discussion with them. You're teaching them. You're showing them their sleep study results. You're discussing treatment options. You're going over what the sleep physician said. You're using your mind a lot more than your hands, your neck, your back. And the physical stuff is your team. It's your assistants. And they're the ones that really do any sort of physical record taking and measurements and all the stuff that we do to actually do this. But the hands-on component of dental sleep medicine is very, very minimal, and it's an ideal thing for somebody in that situation. Now, what you said as far as challenges, of course, every situation is unique, and it's hard to kind of sit there and put everybody into these bubbles and say, well, it's this, or this. I've seen a lot of people, I think the learning curve here is relatively easy. We talked about Lumineers, we talked about CEREC. A lot of people that are in ortho and TMD, I've been through those symposiums and those session 1, session 2, session 17.7, and whatever else you go through. You spend $300,000 learning, and you've done it for 10 years. You haven't started a case yet.
Right.
I get that. And what I like about sleep is the simplicity to it is certainly there. There's a process, but it's very, very cookie cutter, meaning, it's not like, again, I sit here to talk about TMD, but I've been through a million different mini residencies and programs and stuff with TMD where there's a dozen people out there teaching a dozen different techniques, half of them saying the other one doesn't know what the hell they're doing. And you don't know what's right. You just sort of marry yourself to a belief and you hope that does good for you. But what's nice with sleep is there's a lot of consistency. Every case is the same, meaning the reason why they have obstructive sleep apnea is the same. It's a collapsible airway, compliant airway. Your job, Mr. Doctor, is to fix that, to put their mandible in a position that no longer allows those tissues to collapse. There's no magic trick. And so the process is very, very similar. You're going to use the same documentation. Very often you're going to use the same appliance or certainly 2 or 3 different ones to kind of fit different needs, but there's not this huge overwhelming amount of education that needs to happen behind that to become successful. So I think the learning curve here is nice. That being said, I see a lot of people come to a program alone. I can say
that's a very
I've sat in front of more dentists than anybody in the world teaching dental sleep medicine, and I've seen people come there alone, and they sit there in they sit there in the front row, and they're all excited, and they get their manual out, and they take notes and notes and notes, and they're like, I'm going to go do this. And then on Monday morning, they go back to their team and say, okay, guys, we're doing sleep apnea. And everyone's like, oh, crap. The course. Yeah, doc, we're doing sleep apnea. And then by Friday, nobody says a word about it. And, the doctor calls me and they're like, well, I can't do this. It's not that you can't. It's not that you didn't have sleep apnea patients come in this week, because we already said you did. I could sit in any practice in the country from Monday to Wednesday. By Wednesday, I'd have 3 or 4 cases rolling without even blinking an eye. That's easy. Yeah. So it's not a matter of, do you have the patience? It's a matter of, is your entire team set up to do this the right way? So that's the right conversations. I see people, so that's a big one, getting your team on board. So I always encourage, when we're, every weekend, like this weekend, for example, I'm sitting here in Maine in my office, but I've got a course going on in Albuquerque, a course going on in Chicago, a course going on in Toronto. So we've got 3 2-day, Friday, Saturday dental sleep medicine programs almost every weekend. And excuse me. So I always encourage bringing your team or bringing that key point person. One thing that I've seen consistently when I look and survey with hundreds of offices, thousands of offices that are doing this successfully, one thing that is very much a constant across the rock stars, the top performers, the practices that are absolutely crushing this, almost all of them have a quote unquote sleep care coordinator, somebody in the practice that's not the doctor that is quarterbacking this process. Maybe it's an assistant, an office manager, somebody, but it's somebody that's quarterbacking it. And really they're kind of running this process. The doctor is more of just this auxiliary part to it. And so I think having that person, bring them to the class, let them get educated and see the big picture. The other thing is getting the rest of your team on board. Everyone needs that personal connection to this. And that's the nice thing with sleep is you don't have to go, it's not a stretch. It's not like we're talking, this is a life-threatening, life-saving situation that affects every single person out there, whether it's that person directly or a spouse, a parent, a sibling, somebody, right? So I think having everybody experience that personal connection to it is huge. And that should be your getting started process. If you're going to do this, don't go sell it to patients. I want you to treat everybody in your practice as husband, because they all have this, right? They're all dealing with this.
Exactly.
Treat their parents, treat their siblings. Do a dozen cases, not charge the lab bill, whatever. It's not just make an impact on those people so that now your hygienist, when she's screening somebody, can talk about, oh my gosh, I can sleep in the same bedroom as my husband again because of this. and that personal belief carries forward. That means something. That's gonna help continue those screenings and really make it work. So, I always encourage that first.
I can tell you, just as a sidebar, I mean, what you say about having the team involved is, listen, if you're the doctor and you're listening to this or you're watching this, this is the most important thing. And this is not just with sleep. I mean, this is with everything, everything that goes on. Everybody plays a role in that. And you as the doctor getting fired up on a new offering and then trying to sell that to your team, they're thinking, hey, big whoop, let's give it a week and he'll be over this, kind of a thing. And that's not going to get you anywhere. One of the things, John, that we spend the majority of our time on is the process itself. I mean, if you're going to incorporate sleep into your practice, the most important part is what happens on that initial call. So you've got to have the person who takes that call there. You need to have a process for finding out. As you said, it's a consultation. It's a discussion. Finding out what's most important to the patients. The guys that we have that do sleep, and we've got some of them that you and I were talking about the other day that are going to do $1 million in 2017 simply in sleep.
Yep.
Simply in sleep. But we have a process. We spend a lot of time on what you need to accomplish on the intake call, how to find out emotionally what's most important to that patient. And with sleep, it's a couple things, right? Is it, of course, our guys are marketing for sleep. So is this a patient who currently has a CPAP and you're trying to find out emotionally what are the issues that they're dealing with the stinking mask and the hose and all of that kind of thing? And the other part of it is if they're not part of it, if they don't have an appliance like that right now, then you're trying to find out what's most important to them with the fact that they're not getting any sleep or they're not sleeping with their spouse. And it's not uncommon for patients in our practices to open up in a very emotional way.
Absolutely.
And that is not a bad thing. That's a great thing because you have the opportunity to change somebody's life when they're opening up that way. And then, of course, we focus a whole lot on how to handle the financials as well. But I'd love to know, I would have to imagine that you guys have the same sorts of challenges, right?
Absolutely.
There's a process there that you have to implement. It has to be coached. It has to be on a regular basis. I mean, we listen to thousands and thousands of recordings on a regular basis of intake calls, of chairside conversations, of financial arrangements, because, there's a way to get all of those things better. You guys probably face the same thing, right?
Absolutely. There's a process, and I spend more time teaching this flow chart and protocol than just about anything. And I think that, it touches on the first thing you said there is there are kind of two sides to this coin. There are two sources. There's your internal dental patients who have this and don't know they have it. And so they're starting from a different point than the external marketing patients who, excuse me, just getting over a cold here. I apologize.
Sorry.
The external marketing patients who call in and are more qualified. They're diagnosed already most of the time and are looking for alternative therapies. So there's definitely a strategy, a flow chart, a protocol specifically for each of those. And I spent a lot of time early on talking about mistakes and what people do wrong. And I think one of the biggest things is you got to be an educator first. And I think that's especially for your internal patients, for the ones who are coming to your office for dentistry and they don't even know what sleep apnea is, never mind the fact that they likely have it. So it's a very delicate process to go through the questions and the conversations with them. I always lean on dental stuff. I don't make it about their sleep and airway and heart attacks and strokes and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to do any of that stuff. What you want to do is focus on, excuse me. What you want to do is focus on the dental complications. Hey, Mr. Patient, I saw something in your dental exam that was high risk. I was looking at your teeth, or I saw signs of abfractions or clenching or bruxing or a big tongue or a scallop tongue, or the fact that you're pressing your tongue to get it out of your airway, or a narrow dental arch, all these things that are dental, and say, okay, well, that makes me think about sleep and breathing, and so that's why we're going to have this conversation. Get away from the therapy, get away from the endpoint. People spend way too much time trying to sell appliances right away. And that drives me crazy because you rarely have success. When you take a patient who's now coming in for dentistry and they sit down in your chair and you say, oh, do you snore? And they say, yeah, I snore. And now you start shoving this oral appliance in their face trying to fix it. If you focus more on diagnosis and less on fixing the symptom, you'd be more successful.
Oh, that's really nice.
So
that's great
I
advice.
think, what are you trying to sell them? Because now, it always ends up to a money conversation. And when people tell me, oh my gosh, I have a hard time with this because of money or because of insurance. No, you have a hard time for it because you don't know how to talk about it to your patient. Insurance and money are not the reason why people are going to say yes or no. And that's,
that was a bonus. That was a bonus if you're listening to this.
That's a bonus. I always use the oncologist example. When a patient sits down with an oncologist and they say, you have this, and they diagnose them with cancer, I guarantee the first question is not, oh, how much is that going to cost me to fix?
Does
my insurance pay for that? They don't care.
Let me stop you, John, because there's somebody who's listening to what you just said, and that's profound. And I can't believe it took us this long to get to that profoundness, because you just dropped some big knowledge on us here. And if you're listening to this and you're driving down the road, you need to pull over and make a note. Okay? You got to understand, nobody makes decisions about the insurance or the money. Now, there are still, though, some naysayers who are out there. Probably none that listen to this, okay? But there are some that don't listen to this, who are going to hear your example and go, yes, oncology. But John, oncology is not a dentistry. These guys who are going to an oncologist, they're going to say, hey, it's about cancer. So people understand the differences. But the point in what you're saying is true. And frankly, it doesn't matter if you're talking about oncology or if you're talking about a motorcycle. Okay. No. Nobody buys anything, has ever or will ever, based on insurance or dollars. We buy based on our perception of value. And so when you hear that oncology statement that John just made, the translation of that is this: there is a perceived value when an oncologist talks about cancer. So don't get it mixed up and go, yeah, but that's cancer and this is sleep and this is dentistry and all that. No, there is an implied perception of value. Your job is to find out what's most important to the patient about the fact that they're not getting sleep, or about the fact that their relationship is suffering because of this, or their job is suffering because they fall asleep in the middle of the day, or whatever that is. Same thing with dentistry, same thing with everything else. What is it that's most important to you about that? And then show them, once you've got all of that, how clinically what you have to offer is going to fix that. That is a bonus. We should write. Everybody should take notes on that one. Sorry to interrupt. That was some big knowledge there.
I spent a lot of time talking about the case presentation and the, kind of leveraging all these parts that we've gathered through diagnosis against them, leaning on the physician, leaning on the MD. You're not the greedy dentist trying to sell them a $5,000 piece of plastic, because this appliance is not worth what you're charging for. It's to the patient, it's not. It's a piece of plastic.
The commodity itself is not.
So you're not selling, you're not offering.
Exactly.
This is not what you're charging them for. You gotta flip it more to outcomes, right? It's got to be more how that's going to impact them. That's the value in what they're paying for, or what their insurance is paying for, or why they need what you have. And it's always going back to your very first conversation with them, the conversation your hygienist probably had with them, or your assistant had with them when you first took that patient in or pulled them out of the dental side. And that's going to be what's their chief complaint, and whether that's snoring, whether that's whatever it is, daytime sleepiness, their chief complaint's going to be there. You've got to flip that to a chief disability. You've got to take that chief complaint is snoring. Okay, that's a noise. How is that chief complaint negatively impacting their life? Well, that's their chief disability. Their chief disability is the fact that I don't get to sleep in the same bedroom as my wife.
And our relationship is suffering because of it.
Is not a piece of plastic. You're offering a chief benefit, an outcome. It's not, hey, buy my expensive appliance. It's, hey, aren't you excited to be able to sleep in the same bedroom as your spouse again? And that's the outcome. And that creates that perceived value, that need. And then who's paying for this becomes a secondary thing after that. Then it doesn't matter. When you become proficient at that, and I don't care what it is. I mean, this doesn't have to be sleep. I mean, this is cosmetic dentistry. This is implants. This is everything, right? When you're selling implants and veneers, it's not, you're not selling that. You're selling, hey, Mrs. Patient, isn't going to be great to be able to smile for the pictures at your daughter's wedding that's coming up. It's outcomes, it's benefit. And this just happens to be life or death benefit, but still it's good. And I don't know.
What you say is so true, my friend. And this is what I've spent the last 20 years of my life conveying to these guys. At the end of the day, I would submit that the best approach is not even to go after their chief complaint. Find out what it is that they want emotionally overall.
Yeah.
Okay. Then your diagnosis could be soup to nuts. Okay. There is, perhaps there's an SRP. There's some cosmetics, some restorative. There's this, there's that, there's the other thing. There's an appliance, and all of it is together. And all of it is going to get them what's most important to them. I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I can tell you, we spend a lot of time when it comes to sleep. Our guys are tracking at 98%. What that means is 9.8 times out of 10, somebody is walking away with a scheduled appointment. We've started the process. It's paid for. Okay. Mm-hmm. The insurance is filed, but it's paid for with the patient, and they come back. There's no issue. 9.8 times out of 10 is paid for in advance. And that's the way we try acceptance on the sleep. I'm really glad that you brought that up. Let me ask you another question. What do you say to the doctor out there who says, I don't know how to open that conversation. I don't know how to incorporate that into what it is that we're doing on a regular basis. I mean, I'm just, I'm asleep, or I'm a little bit concerned about the, I don't want to say legalities, but the perception that I'm going to make some of these sleep guys mad at me. Do you deal with that? I mean, I've dealt with that. That may not be something.
All the time. I don't know how to start the conversation piece is big. We kind of coach through that, and some of it is what I mentioned a few minutes ago.
Right.
Leaning on the dental more, even though there's some medical things that we can screen for. Leaning on the dental side effects. So now it seems more natural. It's, hey, Mr. Patient, I saw this in your mouth. It raised this red flag, this concern to me. Tell me, let's talk, now let's have a conversation about sleep and breathing, and talk to them about snoring and daytime fatigue and morning headaches and reflux and all the other stuff that comes with it. But if you can lean on a dental thing, I mean, at the end of the day, when you have obstructive sleep apnea, and I know we haven't really got into the disease or anything yet, but the fact is, when you have OSA, when you have sleep apnea, there's an increased amount of parafunction. There's clenching, there's bruxing. Post-event, when you have that choking and suffocating event, you have an arousal, you have a sympathetic response, you have a fight or flight response. Your body has to take control of the muscles, take control of your airway. Part of that means you're going to posture your tongue forward, you're going to activate muscles to open that airway up. And with that arousal, with that surge of adrenaline comes a post-event clench a lot of times. And you'll see that the effects of the clenching, sometimes associated with bruxing, looking at them from a dental perspective. So maybe that's a good way to have that conversation, to start it, to make it more comfortable, more natural. We do other funny things with practices where, we'll do like neck measurements and things as a conversation starter. So patient sits down in a dental chair. You haven't done anything. You haven't touched them. You haven't done anything with them at all. You hold up a little, get a little soft tape measure and put it around their neck. And just, that's it. Look at the number, put a note in their chart. I always tell people, he who talks first loses, right? So just do it like you're tying your shoes, like you've measured 10,000 necks before. And I guarantee you, every single time, 100 out of 100 times, the patient's going to say, why are you measuring my neck? That's weird.
And now the conversation's open.
Right. Great question, Mr. Patient. That's part of our sleep health screening program. Right. And now you open the door. Dr. Smith has noticed a lot of our patients have been diagnosed with sleep-related breathing problems. So we've taken some advanced training. We're now updating all our patients' health history with a sleep health and wellness exam. This is part of it. By the way, tell me, has anybody told you occasionally snore? And you kind of segue into that. So there's lots of ways we can have that conversation. And so hopefully, we don't, and I think it's uncomfortable the first time. It's uncomfortable the second, the third, the 10th time. But you know what? After you do this for a couple days or a week, it's natural. Now it's not uncomfortable anymore. And it's just expected and it's normal and it's just part of your routine. So, you get over that hump and the rewards are there.
So what I'm hearing you say is if I'm listening to this or watching this, number one, if I'm a general dentist, I need to be involved in sleep. I need to incorporate sleep in my practice. It's great for my results. It's great for my profitability. It's great for my clientele.
Absolutely.
And some takeaways that I'm making here based on what you're saying is, jump in and look for the obvious signs, clenching, bruxing, take a neck measurement. What a great idea. Just make it part of what you do and enjoy the pregnant pause. Allow the pregnant pause to take shape so that the patient asks a question. Now the door is open. Now you have the ability to ask questions. And the fourth big takeaway here is somebody, your assistant, your hygienist, somebody has got to be the quarterback in this thing because, as you said, anytime you're implementing something new, it's going to feel weird at first. It's going to feel phony. But just as sure as it felt weird when you cut that first crown, you keep doing it until it becomes just uncomfortable. And then you keep doing it until it becomes comfortable, right? And so somebody has got to be the quarterback of that, you or somebody else. Awesome stuff. You are the man, John. What is one final big fat thing that you need? Listen, I want you to reveal something that you've not revealed to anybody else on this show. What is the thing that only my listeners are going to walk away going, A, John is the dude, but number two, I didn't realize that. What's the thing? What's the big expose, man, that you could throw out there for us?
I don't have any magic wisdom or special, secret sauce with this. There's really not, it's not there. There's nothing that's that complicated. What I'll say is there's a good system out there to follow. You don't have to be lost. You don't have to, I would say this, a lot of people look to get into this. They think the first thing they got to do is go call physicians, which 99 times out of 100 is going to result in nothing or burn some bridges that you can't repair later. So I would encourage you not to do that. Don't go out there. Step one is not open up Google and type sleep doctor Boston and then start calling every sleep doctor there. Because you know what? They've been called by dentists before and they've been pitched this already. They're not the keepers of all the patients. You have them right now. You have sleep apnea patients that you see in your office today. You're going to see some more tomorrow. You're going to see some more the next day. And you know what? That's how you're going to build your physician relationship. You don't need to go out there and call anybody because the patients that you see, let's say you get 3 or 4 or 5 cases rolling. Well, that's 3 or 4 or 5 primary care physicians that now you're going to have to communicate with about a mutual patient in treatment. They probably didn't know that person even had apnea. So it's kind of an option to open the door to them. Let them know what you're doing. Show you're successful. You don't need them for anything, but you're keeping them in the loop. And do a great job. Document your results. Do it above board. Do it all, top notch, top tier. Show them that your appliances work and then ask them for more. Because now they're sitting on a gold mine of patients who probably don't like their CPAPs. They don't know what to do or where to send them to. They didn't even know appliances existed until you reached out. So you're kind of opening a whole new door for them. And it doesn't take long for that to kind of explode and blow up. And now, in 6 months, a year, 18 months, the majority of sleep patients you see will come from outside your practice instead of internal.
And it can be a mutually benefit. I mean, there's cross-referencing here, cross-referring that can go on as well. And I've seen that happen on a regular basis. Don't look at this, if you're listening to this, don't look at this as you got to get something from somebody else. You already have it.
You got it.
Look at it as a way to maximize what you have, but then also put yourself in a position to give back. And now you have this relationship that's mutually based. That's a really good point.
And I would say, if this last hour sounds like something that's interesting to you guys that are listening, you certainly can find me out there. You Google me or look up, Sleep Group Solutions, and you'll find us. But, like I said, we've got 2 or 3 seminars going on almost every single weekend around the country that are teaching these tools. And I would encourage you to come. I'd encourage you to bring a team member or two. We'll get
that's another big takeaway. Don't go to these training programs without bringing your whole team. Now, John was nice.
You'll just bring
people. I would say bring the entire team. Everybody's got to be on board on this thing.
You're right.
There's no reason, doctor. This can be a life changer for your patients, for you, and for your practice, and for your team. Bring the whole team. Don't just bring a couple people.
Do it.
Bring everybody.
Bring everybody. Make it a big, a big 2-day program and a weekend getaway. The team like it. It's a good bonding experience, and it's ultimately you're going to want them to run with this and help you launch it and be successful. And I guarantee it'll happen faster if everybody's on board.
So sleepgroupsolutions.com is where they find you, John?
Yes. Yep.
You guys have an excellent reputation. I follow you myself, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything that you've given us today. I know I put you on the spot there at the end, but only because I want to make sure you didn't have some top secret thing that you wanted to throw at us. You got all kinds of good stuff. Just to recap real quick, all right? You need to incorporate sleep. Look for opportunities with what you already have dentally, clenching. Take neck measurements. What a great idea. Do it just as surely as you put the bib on. Second thing is do that, and then allow the pregnant pause. This is a simplistic process. There's not a whole lot to it. There's not anything that's going to be taxing on you as the doctor. And the biggest takeaway that I would say you threw out there is don't look at this as you are taking from somebody out in the space in terms of on the medical side. This is an opportunity to fully establish some very mutually beneficial relationships for you, for the medical doctor, and for your patient. John, thank you so much, my friend. Vice President, Sleep Group Solutions. This is all about happier clients, better results, and making more money. And I appreciate you giving us that opportunity. Thank you, John.
All right, Sean. Thank you very much.